When we watch YouTube videos where people are setting up rifles or doing load development or whatever, everything tends to just go great. It's just all textbook. Just do A, B, C, D, and E, and you're done. Here's your rifle shooting quarter-minute groups at 5 miles. I mean, in the real world, it just generally don't go that way. Okay, and I had a little experience this past week. All right, last time we started the preliminary load development with the 1885 Winchester here in 6.5 Creedmoor. And we went to the range. It's a great trip. Learned a lot. Okay, tried a couple powders. Off to a good start. Well, then there were some developments this past week. I didn't use the best load data that I could have when I loaded for the rifle. Okay, when we were out at the range, I noticed the velocities were lower than I was expecting. And what happened is I didn't use Sierra's load data. And the reason being is because my Sierra manual here is so old, it doesn't even have 6.5 Creedmoor in it. This would have came out right about the time they were coming out with 6.5 Creedmoor. Okay, so I used generic load data, and it was safe data. It was published data, and I cross-referenced it multiple places, and it's for 140 grain bullets. So I'm not worried about it from a safety factor, just from a performance standpoint. Okay, well then my friend Joey, he was on vacation last week. I knew he had the latest Sierra manual. I would have checked with him right off, but he wasn't in town, so he got back and I called him up. He looked it up, and sure enough, Sierra's published data for their 140 grain Match King bullets used a lot more powder than the charges I used when we went to the range last week. Okay, no big deal, just that's why my velocities were a little off. Okay, so I probably need to update my manual. I need to make a few changes. Well, then we ran into a few other little hiccups. Okay, when we were at the range last week, and I started with the Sellar and Bellet ammo just to get the rifle on paper, and I wanted to see the velocities. Okay, that was 140 grain ammo. I thought it was 130. Well, I knew I had some 130, so I got to looking in the Winchester PowerPoints that I broke in the barrel with that I thought was 140. Actually, this is the 130 grain bullet. I knew I had 130 grain bullets and 140 grain bullets. I just got them mixed up on which one was which. That kind of stuff happens. Okay, and none of that was a safety issue, and that's all we're worried about seriously, is to make sure we have no safety issues or nothing that could become a safety issue. Right. But other than that, when it comes to the preliminary load development or just setting up a new rifle, it's the kind of stuff we run into, and we're gonna make mistakes, by the way. And none of us are perfect. There ain't one person that ever lived that was perfect, and they nailed him to a cross. Okay, so the rest of us, we're gonna make some mistakes. And that's perfectly okay, as long as it's not a safety issue. All right, well, again, that's the whole point of the preliminary load development. That's when we get to know our rifle, our equipment, our ammo, all of it. And just for factory ammo. I guess 2 years ago I was at the range and there was a young man there. He had a 270 and it all of a sudden just wasn't shooting well at all for him. And last time he had been to the range, he found a bullet that shot great, and he was just going back to confirm it, and all of a sudden he's just big groups. And he thought it might have been because the brand ammo he was using, they changed the brass. They went from brass casings to nickel. Thought maybe that was the difference. Well, after he went through different ammo, trying different ammo that he had there, he was doing the preliminary load development for it, even with factory ammo. He was trying different bullets. He had different boxes of bullets, factory ammo to try. Well, then he remembered the bullet that shot so well for him was 150 grains, and what he was shooting then were 130s. And as soon as he remembered that, he reached, got the box of 150 grain bullets, put it in his rifle, and it just started driving tacks. Okay, we make mistakes like this. All of us, every single one of us, even the people on YouTube doing videos that show you how smooth everything goes, and just follow steps, you know, A, B, C, and D, and you end up with that perfect whatever. It seldom goes like that. Especially, all right, if you've got somebody that they've been loading for a cartridge for a decade, okay, they're set up. They're not probably running into any issues. But anybody, when they go get a new rifle, a new cartridge, I don't care how long they've been loading, they're going to run into some little something or another. And especially now with components being what they are, we might have this powder and this bullet, but we might have a hard time finding load data for this powder for this bullet. I mean, those are just the kind of challenges we run into now. And on myself. This is my case trimmer. Okay. This has different pilots in the end. Your brass goes on here, and then the little pilot goes into the case mouth and holds it in place while you trim the brass down to the right length. And it comes with different size pilots. And this had every size caliber you could want, except for it didn't have a 26 caliber, which is 6.5 Creedmoor. Okay, when this came out, when I bought this, nobody loaded for 6.5s. So they didn't include it as an accessory with all the other pilots in here. And they had just about every caliber you can name, from a 22 caliber all the way up to a 35. Didn't have 26. So I had to order one, and that's fine, it wasn't much. And then I ran into the same thing with my comparator used to measure bullet length. I didn't have a 6.5 comparator in the set. Had everything else, but ran into quite a few of those little things. I haven't loaded for a 6.5 before. I've shot 6.5 by 5.5. I've just never loaded for it. Well, now I'm loading for 6.5 Creedmoor, and that's when I find out, okay, I don't have this, this, and this, and this. So that's the whole point of the preliminary load development. And if you run into issues, don't worry about it. It's okay. That's the whole point of the preliminary. Okay, as for where we're at now, I went to the range this morning. I did the load testing again for the H4831 with Sierra's load data, and the velocities did come up. But I still seen the same issues we had before. The velocities just weren't consistent. We're still getting the flyers. I had one really good group out of that testing. And next I tried the H4350 because a couple of you asked if I was going to try it, and that seems to be a really popular powder for 6.5 Creedmoor. And it just wasn't there. Same thing, very similar to the H4831. I was just getting the occasional flyer and the velocities just weren't there. So that wasn't the powder either. All right, but using the updated load data, all of the velocities were really good. Okay, so with that being the case, those two powders, our best powder so far has been the IMR 4350. Really consistent velocities, showing lots of potential there. The two powders I tried this morning are actually slower burning powders. And if we look at the burn rate chart here from Hodgdon, we can see they're slightly slower. What we're going to try next time, since we've still got a little brass we want to fire for them, we're going to try a little faster powder next time. So we're going to try Varget, and we'll probably reshoot the IMR 4350 also with the updated data. And after that, I think we're going to be done with the preliminary load development, because we're already in really good shape with the IMR 4350 with what we've already tested. Okay, so that's where we're at on the project, and I'll get that loaded up this week, get back to the range, and hopefully everything goes a lot smoother, which is starting to. I'm starting to get organized here for a new cartridge, new to me, and a new rifle. Again, that's part of the preliminary load development. And I've really enjoyed doing these projects instead of doing a presentation. Okay, if I were going to do a presentation on this stuff, hey, this is what you do, step A, B, C, D, and E, and everything would, sound great. But there's all those little unanticipated things we run into when we actually go to set up a rifle. Like when I was checking the distance to the lands on this one. Throat's a little tight. I wouldn't have ever thought to have mentioned that in a presentation. Whereas because we actually went through and measured the distance to the lands on this one, and this Benini rifle, that's just one of the little unexpected things we ran into. Well, those are the things we all run into, and it's okay if you run into them too. Just because the people on YouTube don't run into any problems, it doesn't mean that you're not going to run into any. Okay, so that's where we're at, and then we'll be back out there next weekend and see if we can't get this wrapped up on the preliminary load development. And God bless and have a good day.